Hi, everybody. Welcome to Evolve, where we focus on the evolution of leadership and leadership in the workplace. And thank you for joining us today. Thanks for listening or watching our video recording. And I'm really excited to have Nora on today. Do you mind taking a second to introduce yourself and your company?
Yeah, great. Thanks. I'm Nora Herting, founding CEO of ImageThink. ImageThink helps businesses unlock potential and get results by helping them think and work visually.
So tell me, bring that down, dummy that down if you were telling my 15-year-old daughter what you do. What does that mean?
Yeah, so we bring the power of visual thinking to businesses to help leaders not only communicate where they're going, but get teams aligned and on the same page so they can make their ideas a reality. And we have a whole host of visual tools that we use to do so.
Oh, that's awesome. So does it help in general with collaboration? Does it kind of help companies grow together? Like, what is your typical company?
Well, typically for us, our companies are Fortune 100 companies. We have had the pleasure in 12 years of working from, our first client was NASA, all the way to Salesforce and tech. A lot of our clients do fall into the tech and healthcare space. And I think that that's because both of those industries have a high premium on IP, right? Their intellectual property is everything. And because of that, they really value innovation and collaboration. So that's kind of our sweet spot. But we've had the pleasure of working with all sorts of different companies throughout the years.
Yeah, no, that's exciting, and I think obviously we're at least I hope we're on the backside of the pandemic, and companies still are having a remote workforce. Some are talking about continuing that. Some continue to push back that date of when people have to be in the office. But how do you think leaders drive innovation and employee engagement with that remote workforce that's existing right now? I mean, we none of us know if that's going to continue forever. I mean, some companies are saying possibly, but what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I love this question because obviously we're dealing with an image sync and we've helped our clients in the last year and a half work this way. So one of the things you've noticed is there's a high level of uncertainty and a lot of flexibility that has to happen with strategy. So one way we've supported clients in that is helping them visualize messaging that they're going to need to spread out to their team about pivoting, about communication, and using visuals to do that is really powerful because I'm sure you and your listeners know and have had experiences that people remember visuals more than just written or spoken word. It allows for storytelling, for leaders to craft a metaphor and engage people around it. So that's one way, as we've seen, there's a lot of things that are changing, and communication and communicating to your team while you're all distributed, super, super important, right? Another way that we've seen helping clients like work remotely is helping them still keep the meetings visual and engaging. So rather than have everybody, staring at their own self on Zoom, we'll be on the video calls and using digital tablets, we'll visualize all the content, all the strategy like we would in an in-person meeting, but remotely. So people have another point of engagement. They can literally see their contributions to the conversation pictured with everybody else's. So there's a higher level of engagement for that reason. And then we've also helped clients make shifts to make their agenda or their approaches for in-person sessions work better in a virtual format.
Now, do you have any strategies or recommendations on creating better virtual meetings? Because we're all stuck still. It's not my favorite. I still love the face-to-face meeting. I love to see that body language. I mean, you can kind of get it sometimes through a video call. But I think a lot of senior leadership, a lot of C-suite teams are really struggling kind of coming up with a better way to engage people like that.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, we put together a whole course on how to lead better virtual brainstorms and virtual meetings. But a few things to think about is one is to adjust your timing. So we found that, first of all, people, I'm sure you know, can't be in a video meeting as long as they can be together. So we'll work with clients to break up longer meetings over a series of days and say, okay, let's keep it to no more than 4 hours max if we, if it's a workshop, right?
Yeah.
And give people a lot of breaks. You also need to build in time to connect, because if you think about it, if we were in person, we'd all come into the room, we'd look around, we'd see who was there. I'd be like, hey Kim, how's your kids? Like, I hope your flooding isn't like so terrible today, right? And
Yeah.
then, like, we'd have like a pastry or something before we all got together. And that was just really organic. Now that's not happening, right? And so as much as you want to kind of get to the agenda, we help clients come up with, either breakout groups or some interesting prompts. Sometimes we'll actually have people draw at the beginning of the session and hold it up in front of the camera. Something to build in that time for connection, because that's not happening and it's super important. So thinking about the timing and really reconceiving how much time you're spending in a session, and making those, my team calls it planned fun, which I'm like, really scheduled fun? That sounds, but they're like, yeah, we have to just schedule times for us to connect and like make a point of it, because it just doesn't happen in the same way in a virtual format. But it's really important, right, for the group to kind of understand who's all there, get a little comfortable before you go on to your agenda items. So that's one big point I'd like to drive home with folks today listening, is just build that time to connect and adjust your expectations about how much time you can be on a video virtual meeting and how much you can get done in that session.
Yeah, and obviously you work with a lot of different types of companies and a lot of business leaders. How have you seen companies continue to be successful during this time? Like, is there, one critical difference that you've seen, or when you think of the companies that are doing well, during this unique time, right? We still have a lot of remote people. We have some in the office. A lot of our clients we're finding, they're back maybe 2 days a week, and they're having flex time. But the majority of at least the folks I'm talking to and working with, they're some type of hybrid. They're not back full time. So what do you have any
Yeah, well,
thoughts?
I don't have like full insight into company numbers, but I can tell you with our clients like different approaches that we saw. At the beginning, we saw some people, some very big companies, just say, "Yeah, we can't figure out how to map this program virtually, so we're just not going to do it." Right? And they just completely um, hit pause. Now, eventually, because this has gone on so long, they came back and realized that they had to figure out how to adapt. While other companies kind of forged ahead and said, okay, we just have to figure this out. At the beginning, we worked with pharmaceutical companies, small companies, spent 10 years working on this one drug that was about to be approved. And they had a huge meeting plan to train all their sales reps. And they just pivoted right away, because they couldn't put it on hold. So those are some different approaches I think that people have had. And seeing some people just charge right ahead and other people be really reticent to try to figure out how they're going to map this to the virtual space. And we've been able to help those folks as well. So there's definitely a wide spectrum to how people have chosen to adapt, or how quickly they did try to adapt. And I'm not sure if you've noticed that as well, Kim, over the last year or so.
Yeah, what's so funny is I laugh and I say that some of what I would call the more conservative companies and the older leadership companies, like such as an older law firm, they're the ones that were just so anti any type of video call, video meeting. Everything was old school. They barely knew how to turn on a computer and use it, except for the basics, and they have been forced to change. And I find it interesting because I think for the most part have adapted, but the people that have adopted it much easier are the younger tech firms, that, or just have that mentality of liking to have software. And it's interesting, we see a lot of growth in software companies right now because of the fact that so much more adoption is in place now than ever before. So it's interesting that we were forced to change, right? Some people, and they would have never chosen to do that.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it was eye opening for lots of folks what was possible because of necessity, right? Like necessity is the mother of invention, and I think that this has
Yeah,
been
it's
like
so
a
true.
highly creative time. This didn't impact all businesses equally, right? We have some clients, like you said, like software, that have thrived because of circumstance, and other ones that really, really felt some type of downturn or depression in their business. But I think that it all in all, we're going to look back, and I know the team at Image think this is the case, and say this was a highly creative time for a lot of businesses because we had to adapt and we had to problem solve. And things like, you shared with me that this podcast came out of COVID. So I think that in some ways it's been really exciting to see the creativity and ingenuity that people have met this challenge with, right?
Yeah, and continue to be challenged with. I mean, everybody, at least I thought it was a green light going forward, and we've kind of gone a little bit backwards again. And I just read again this morning that a few additional companies have extended their, till next year now. It was going to be the fall. So I think it's really interesting because that, to me, that means additional software that's being built, being launched, being, going. And I think it's all improving all of us in general. So, I think a lot of, really bad things have come out of this, but I think there's been some, bright, bright stars as well along the way. We find that a lot of CEOs right now, CFOs, controllers, operations, they're really struggling to figure out and navigate what's next. And I think partly, like you mentioned earlier, because none of us know, right? I mean, what are your thoughts? Do you have any advice for business leaders as they kind of continue forward and figure things out?
Yeah, I mean, this is not directly from me, but I think it was a quote I saw from another client about their client, which was Amazon, and Jeff Bezos saying, at this point, you cannot wait for 100% of the data to make a decision. If you have 60 or 70% of the information, that's enough to act on. And I thought, wow, that's really true, right? Because we don't have complete information. There's a high level of uncertainty. And so adjusting our expectations, or doing some kind of contingency planning. So, having a brainstorming session to say, what are the possible scenarios that could happen? And we did this even on our team to say, okay, uh, if this lasts longer, what kinds of trends do we think? Where are our clients going to be, and how do we try to stay ahead of them? And you sort of do a couple of different scenario planning so that you have different options lined up. So when you sort of feel that the the earth is pivoting that way, if you will, you and the team already kind of have a plan on how to anticipate and what would be next. So instead of having one strategic plan for a year or 3 years, maybe you have two or three, and they're all 3 to 6 months. That's, I think, the reality that we're all living in. And we're also seeing our clients make decisions very quickly, very short term, partially because we're in a virtual world, so we can. So we work with a company puts on one of the biggest software conferences in the country, and they made the decision to go virtually last year, like a month before the conference, and put it on. So there's a lot less certainty, but there's also, because we are working remotely, we have the benefit of technology. I think we can execute decisions in some ways quicker.
Yeah, no, and I like your advice on shorter term thinking, and partly because there's just so much unknown, and we've never really had that happen before, at least in my lifetime. Not being able to say, hey, let's plan for next year, or let's roll this out. Well, I just think you can't do that at the moment. I think it's very short term. I like your idea of kind of coming up with a few different scenarios and branching out, those trees. Like, what does scenario A, what does that look like? What are the positives and negatives? What could go wrong? What could go right? Right? Scenario B, because at least we're finding a lot of companies, their space has changed, right? Their requirements for their office space is drastically changed because of their workforce. People are struggling to even get people to show up or even to hire. So it's been this really unique conundrum that we've never seen before. And more than ever, we're finding that companies can't just offer a place for people to show up to go to work. They have to actually offer a place that people want to be at. So instead of just giving somebody a desk, people are coming in and actually judging that workplace, looking at, like, do I really want to spend the majority of my day here? And it's really interesting because they never did that before. So we're just seeing this huge evolution in general, with the entire workforce and workplace. So it'll be interesting to see. I look forward to talking to you again in the next 6 months and 12 months and see how things have changed for sure.
Yeah, I think that that's really true. There's so much happening and so much changing. And one of the things that we're seeing at ImageThink, besides helping design strategic sessions with visuals, a lot of people coming to us and saying that part of their meeting is really just about team building and connecting more, where that used to be, I think, not necessarily in the agenda for an annual meeting or a semi-annual meeting, but people are seeing the need for that. And a lot of people too who have, like you said, changed positions where they have new team members that they've never met in person and coming to us and saying, help us figure out a way that we can just connect better. And that kind of goes back to like the building and time for it, right?
Right.
Making space for that. So that's definitely something, a trend that we've seen that companies and leaders are starting to acknowledge and really seeing that they need to be intentional about that, to keep that connectivity going. And I think that what happens is that people on an individual level are productive in these situations, but where it's cross collaboration or different roles have to touch each other, we need more intentionality around how we do that because we are distributed right now, a lot of us.
Yeah, so true. And really the purpose of Evolve is to allow business leaders to come together and learn, connect, and grow. And I can't thank you enough for taking your time today to talk to us and share your insight and thoughts and introduce your company. I think it's a tremendous resource for a lot of the folks that tune in and listen and share. So thank you again for joining us today, Nora.
Yeah, thanks, Kim.
And hopefully you can stay out of the water today everywhere.
Yeah. Well, hopefully both of us will stay dry where we are.
Yeah, exactly. Well, thank you again. Bye bye.